Welcome to the final round of the FIDE Candidates 2024. We see Fabiano Caruana making his way to the board. It's the very important clash where Caruana is half a point behind the leaders and facing him is Jan Nepomniachtchi, who's also half a point behind the leaders. And so this is a very important clash between them. Whoever manages to win this has to depend upon Gukesh drawing his game and then joining him, or Nakamura beating Gukesh. So there's a lot of permutations, but it goes without saying that they have to play for a win. So either Jan or Fabi both have to play for a win. Nepo is trying for his third win at the candidates. He's won the previous two editions. A smile on Nepo's face, a handshake, and off we go. Caruana hasn't won the candidates since 2018 and he opens the game with 1 d4. A smart decision because 1 e4 would have attracted perhaps Nepo's Petrov. But you never know, Nepo also has to play for a win. So he goes for e6. And now, in order to play for a win, Caruana goes knight c3 and says to Nepo that I'm okay with your Nimzo Indian. But Nepo goes for d5. The queen's gambit declined on the board. Pawn takes pawn. And now pawn takes back on d5. The main move here is to put your bishop on g5, and that's exactly what Caruana does, going into queen's gambit decline territory. But Nepo goes for the sharp line with bishop b4. This is the Ragozin e3 played here. And the thing is, you can always put your bishop on e7, which is more solid, but with the bishop on b4, you are pinning the knight here. But at the same time, this is an irritating pin that you have to deal with. Bishop goes back and Nepo goes full on the attack. He goes g5. Bishop comes to g3. And now the knight jumps into e4, making use of this pin, putting pressure on g3, threatening h5, h4, which is a common idea here. One of the main moves in this position is knight e2. Caruana thinks for a bit and plays his queen to c2 here. Nepo comes back to the board. Of course, he's well prepared. You can see his time on the clock, 1 hour 59 minutes. He pushes his pawn to h5 after a couple of minutes of thought. He wants to push h4 and trap this bishop. If it goes to e5, you have f6. So Fabi just pushes his pawn to f3 and asks Nepo's knight to move away. Of course, you cannot move away the knight. This bishop will be alive and it's very dangerous. So you have to capture it. He takes on g3. And now pawn takes g3. In a way, I would say this is a very interesting position that has cropped up. Bishop goes to e6. Nepo still in his prep. And this is a very good position for both the players who are playing in this must-win scenario. Bishop comes out to d3. You can see that the f5 square is weak and that the bishop would like to settle there at some point. Also, f4, f5 becomes an idea. And you can also long castle, but c6 played here by Jan. He's clearly provoking Caruana to go all out against him. And Fabi now goes long castle. He doesn't need invitation to play sharply today. He goes long castle and his idea is at the right time to break in the center with e4. Knight comes out to d7. Nepo still has 1 hour 54 minutes. He must be in his prep. While Caruana has 1 hour 45 minutes on the clock. f4 played. f5 is going to trap the bishop. So he has to remain very, very careful. But with f4, he has weakened his g4 square. So maybe Nepo can jump in with bishop to g4. Yes, he plays there. Bishop comes to g4 and now attacks the rook. The rook has to move. Maybe rook e1 is an idea. Maybe bishop drops back to e2. Maybe the knight comes up ahead. Many possibilities here. And Caruana thinks a bit and plays his knight to f3, finishing his development. Now, this tension on g5 and f4 is in white's favor. So it's very useful for Nepo to just take this. I understand that after ef4, this file opens up. But let's say after take, queen f6, if a check comes, then the king can settle on d8, which would be a good position. But instead, he goes queen e7 And now Caruana plays this very nice move e4. You can see Nepo was a bit surprised. He takes on c3, maybe not the best. Again, he should have taken here and then taken here, and maybe his position was fine, but he takes on c3. Caruana, if he takes back with the pawn, that keeps the option of this queen a3 check alive. That's the reason why he takes this with the queen. And the point is very simple. If you take here, I take here, you cannot win the piece because of rook e1 and you lose the queen. So that's the reason why he takes on f3 now. And Caruana's position starts to get quite promising now, because he's going to take back with the pawn on f3. As we said, this had to be taken because the threat was to take on g5. So g takes f3 has been taken, and now e takes d5 is a threat to open up the position. So he takes on e4. And now if you take back with the pawn, then maybe long castle and black is doing okay. But Caruana can actually now take with the bishop. Good move there. And now this bishop is well positioned. Threat could be to open up the position with d5. So Nepo has to be careful. He takes on f4. And the point here for Caruana is that he's going to push the pawn to g4. You can see him taking his time and pushes his pawn to g4. Excellent move, because you can't take, this is hanging, and on the other hand, this is just a big problem. He could have actually played d5 to attack this rook, but the problem was queen c5 pinning here, and that's the reason why he went g4. And now Nepo long castles. His position would have been fine if not for the next move that Fabi has. Can Caruana find it? Yes, d5, excellent move, pinning the pawn on the c file. It cannot take here. There is a lot of pressure. You can see Caruana getting up from the chair. He is better. h4 played by Nepo. You can see he's unhappy with his position, and Caruana now has a chance to win this. Also, the game between Gukesh and Nakamura is equalish, which means that if Fabi wins, he will be able to enforce the tie breaks. He takes on c6, and this is almost mate. Almost mate here if he takes this pawn. Of course, he goes knight to c5, and the point being that if you take here, I settle my king on b8, which is a safe square for my king. So Caruana gives a check with his bishop, which is the best move here. And now the king has to move away to b8. Yes, king goes to b8, and now a wise move is to just tuck your king to b1. Fantastic chess. And taking this is bad because here your king is too weak. There's check and rook c1. So he goes b6. But if you see, this pawn on c6 is an absolute beast. If you can just put your bishop here, that's already a winning position. Caruana instead prefers the rook, and he points out that if you take here, then I'm going to simply push my pawn to c7 and I'm completely winning. So you can't take the rook. The rook has to take the rook, and now you can take back with the pawn. Now if you take this back, knight takes d7, your rook is hanging in the corner, so you need to save it. Nepo gets his rook to d8. Look at the black king, so exposed. The pawn is on the 7th rank. Fabi is just moments away from winning this. Queen d4, good move, because if you take knight takes d7 here, maybe you have to take it, because otherwise I'm just taking here on f4. So he takes it. If queen takes f4, there is this move knight e5 or queen e5. Both these moves are possible. So Caruana gets his rook to d1, and he's pinned this here, which means that the knight is unable to move. And if you play queen, king c7, there is queen takes f4. So very smart move here by Nepo, which is queen c5. If you take here, I take and play king c7, and this is equal. So that's the reason why Fabi now plays the move queen takes f4 check. Queen goes back to c7, and now queen comes to d2, keeping this pin alive. h3 played. Again, an interesting move, because if you take here, I go h2, and now I'm threatening h1. and this is already fine for black perhaps. So that's the reason why bishop e4 played. Very, very good move, because he's threatening queen d5 and a mate here, which is what he does, which is where Nepo has to play king to a7. So the king moves to a7 is the only way. Yes, he plays his king to a7, and now queen takes f7 played here by white. h2 is on the board. He's pushed his pawn to h2. Queen h7 played here, and there is a pin this way, there is a pin this way, the pawn is under control. King b8 played, and now Caruana plays his pawn to a3 quietly and calmly. Nepo brings his queen up, but clearly there is nothing much that is happening on the board. Queen h6 is a smart move, because you're keeping an eye on the b6 pawn. This pawn is going nowhere, and now you can slowly start pushing your g pawn. So queen c7, it's time to start pushing ahead. g5 seems to be the right move. Yes, and right now the position is resignable for black. Jan Nepomniachtchi can simply resign. He goes rook g8, which is a decent move, and rook goes to h1. He could also have played his queen to e6, putting pressure here, but rook h1 is fine. Knight c5 played, and now a simple bishop going back to c2 with the idea of f4 is very powerful, but he goes bishop h7, and this is a small mistake. Jan gets his chance now. He takes on g5, and Caruana is a bit surprised here. He's thinking to himself, this is a move that I did not see so seriously. Takes on g5, and now Jan Nepomniachtchi gets his chance, because now the king is a bit weak. King a1 is a mistake. King a2 would have been much better, because after a check you go here, check, and then king b1. But he's gone king a1 on move number 41, and queen c2. Excellent move found here by Jan, threatening check and check with a draw. So check comes on g8, king goes to a7, and now he plays king a2, a smart move, because there's no more check on this diagonal, so the queen cannot come to b3, but a4 is still a draw. Yes, he finds it with the idea of knight b3 to knight c1 check. Pawn comes up to f4, but that doesn't change anything. Now he must be careful. He must play king a6 as a prophylactic move, but he goes knight b3, and this is a mistake. Caruana has seen it, that he now has queen g7 and bringing the queen here so that there is no knight c1 check. This is the move that Caruana has to find. Yes, he finds it. Queen g7 check. King has to go up, king a6, but now queen comes to c3. The defense is back, and now Caruana is winning once again after a small scare for him. Queen g2 attacking the rook. Well, check here is a good idea, and he goes queen c4 check. Around at this point, the game of Gukesh and Nakamura has ended in a draw, which means that Caruana now, if he wins, he will get the tie breaks against Gukesh, and this will be a huge thing for him, because the momentum is on his side. He plays rook e1, fantastic move, threatening to checkmate here. Nepo has to go knight c5, and now queen f1, stopping the pawn from queening. So the queen went back to give a check. King b1, white is completely winning. If queen h1 comes in, there's a pin, and it's a lost cause here. So Nepo gives another check. Now king a1 is a good move, because after check you go to a2. There are no more checks there. This is slowly turning into a clear win. Once again, Fabi fighting back, showing character there. Jan Nepomniachtchi goes in to c2 once again, but this time there's no drawing pattern with knight b3, knight c1. The square is already controlled. He can push the pawn forward. That's exactly what he does, because there's no draw. He pushes the pawn forward, but Nepo says, I'm threatening a mate on b2. What's your plan now, Fabi? What do you do? So he goes rook b1. He protects the pawn on b2. And now the knight comes to c5. check, there is king a2, so it's completely fine. He can actually push his pawn forward to f6, and he does so. Pawn to f6, excellent. White is winning. White is completely going forward, just 2 steps away from queening. He goes for a check. King comes up to a2, and now Jan Nepomniachtchi's idea is knight d2, 4 king here. That is his plan. The queen is attacked. The queen moves away with a check, so the king has to go away. Goes king a7, and now an important move to play rook d1 or rook c1. Both are winning. He goes rook c1, excellent move. Check. You move your king to a1, and now you have a threat of rook c1, rook c7, queen b7 coming in. This looks very, very dangerous here. He goes queen e6, and now rook d1 and rook e1 are the winning moves. And the point is, after rook e1, queen takes f6, you just simply win this pawn and you are winning. But instead he goes check, and this is not a good idea, because after king a6, f7, there is a draw to be taken here, which Jan has to find. He goes knight b3. He finds this first move, a check. You go to a2, there is a discovered check, so you have to come to b1. King b1 played, and now he goes queen f5. The draw here was knight d2, drawing the king out. Queen g6 check, king takes d2, and queen d6. This would have been a perpetual check, but instead he goes queen f5, king a2, and now once again white is winning. Look at the number of times the evaluation of the position has changed here. King comes up, and now Caruana goes queen a8 check. Moves in with the king, queen. King comes up to b5, and the winning idea now is to give a check. King a6 and queen e2, bringing the queen this way, but instead he goes queen c6 check. King comes back to a6. What a position this is. Somehow it seems that the black king should be mated, but with just 1 minute left on the clock, there's so much of nerves here. The players are repeating the moves. Caruana cannot have a draw here. He needs to fight for the win. And in it, maybe Nepo gets his chance. If Nepo wins, he enforces the tie breaks against Gukesh. So everything to play for here. Rook e7 played here by Fabi. With 1 minute 51 seconds. Jan has 12 minutes 56 seconds. He goes queen f1 here. Fantastic move. The position is now equal. Queen a8 check. King comes up to b5. And queen e8 check played. The most important thing to stop here is queen c4 check, because this is a perpetual draw. So that's the reason why he gives a check again. Caruana is very low on time, which is why he's repeating the position. Queen e8 check. I think none of the players will even claim a threefold repetition, because there's nothing to gain out of it. And Jan is shaking his head. Rook e4 played. What a move here by Caruana, trying to play for a win. Because now he stopped queen c4 check, and he's hoping somehow to queen this, because if you play knight e4, you cannot queen, by the way. If you queen, there is a mate already with queen c4 check, king here, and queen coming in. So that's the reason why rook e4, you can see Nepo now calmly calculating, because this might be his chance somewhere to play for a win. Because is there any opportunity he has? If you make a queen, by the way, here, then queen a8 is a checkmate, because after king b5, rook b4 is game over. So that's the reason why you cannot even make a queen, and Nepo is now calmly calculating. The only way actually is knight e4, and then after this a check. King goes back to b7. I take this also with a check. King a7, and now the problem is that if I go here and make a queen, then already queen c4 and queen c4 and h1 is a draw. So that's the reason why he has to play after this maybe a check, queen takes queen, check to the king and pick up h2, and then white would be a pawn up, 2 versus 1, which is slightly tricky to win. So after a deep thought, Yan takes the rook with his knight, queen takes the pawn on a4, king goes back, and this is all calculated by Fabi, but you can see that he knows there's no win here. It's only a draw. King goes to a7. And now he gives a check again. Nepo brings his king back, because also you have a pawn that is queening. So that's the reason why Fabi gives in queen d7 check. King comes up to a6. And now after queen c8 check, which is the most natural move, king a7, you make a queen, I take your queen, you take the queen, and I make a queen. That's the point here. He makes a queen, queen takes queen, queen takes queen, and another queen will be made on the board. And the end result is this 2 versus 1 pawns, which is a theoretical draw. There's no way to win here. You can see from the expression of both the players, they are still playing, but they know that the result is already decided. There's absolutely no way for white to make progress, because even if you manage to create a passer here, the problem is that a queen trade is also fine. The pawn endgame would also be drawn. So that's the reason why, after a pawn is traded. So that's the reason why, like, if you play a move like queen b4, of course you cannot trade, there's a mate. So queen f7 check, king b8, and now it's one of those cases where none of the players want a draw, because both want to win in order to get a chance and a shot at the candidate's victory and the world title. But they both have to fight. None of them is going to give away the point, and in that it leads to a loss for both sides. So very, very weird situation here, but that's the nature of chess, and that's also one of the things which is so beautiful about chess, that you are very, very true to the game. Now of course trading here is a lost endgame. This is winning for white, so clearly Nepo shouldn't trade. So he goes queen f6, queen comes back to d2, and Fabi is trying, he's hoping against hope that there is some way for him to make some progress. Maybe now he pushes his pawn, but in a way the third rank has opened up, so checks will start coming from there. Queen e6 played by Nepo, queen h3 check coming up next. Goes queen d3. And we are on move number 90. So already they're playing since a very, very long time. Even the time, if you look at it, they have gained considerable time on the clock. 7 minutes for Caruana, 14 minutes for Yan Nepomniachtchi. Queen c3 played. And of course Nepo has absolutely no chances here. King b8. Well, Caruana has all the reasons to be unhappy here, because he really played a good game. He had great winning chances, but he did not manage to convert it. And I think it was only nerves. In any other event, if Caruana had gotten such a position, then he would have been able to convert it maybe 9 out of 10 times. It's just the nerves of the candidates, the things at stake here, which has led him to draw this. Which means that if the game ends in a draw, Gukesh wins this candidates without having to play the tie breaks, which is a big result for the 17-year-old boy. But you have to keep playing till the very end and hope that there is some blunder that comes in. Queen check, like for example a blunder like king a6, but it's still not a blunder because b5, king a5, check, king b4. In fact, black is doing completely fine here. So king b8, king c3, and now maybe a check on e5 is very logical. He goes queen e5 check, and now I think there's perpetual coming in. King d3, queen check, king comes up. Well, if the king can somehow manage to reach here, that would be something, but cannot, goes back. And there's no check here for the time being. Queen d6, just simply moving the queen. And we are on move 101. What a big fight by both these players who came all out today for the full point, but in the end did not manage to get it. But that's the thing about chess, a fight is very important, and that's what both the players have shown here. Queen e2, queen goes back and gives a check. King a3, and now keeps the queen there. That's a good spot for the black queen. For Fabi, it's also a question of when he should stop trying for the full point, because the position has been around the similar zone for quite some moves now. He goes queen d4 with the idea of a perpetual check here with queen c3. King goes to b3, and now queen e3 check. He goes king a7. And Caruana plays his queen back to e2. Queen comes up with a check. King a3. And he plays his queen to d4. Caruana plays king b3 and offers a draw. Nepo smiles. He knows that draw is not going to help both of them. He looks around and I'm sure he's going to accept it. But what a situation this is. He says, okay.
Through like tournaments. I mean, early through tournament for everyone.
I wanted to play rook e7 first, and then I decided to give it a check. Okay,
no,
completely finished.
Some study. Maybe it's draw after queen c2. I didn't see how much you get, but like wow, it's some chances.
Yeah, it's not easy. But then once I got the pawn to f7, it has to be completely ill. Pawn f7, I can't imagine he survives. Probably just trade to f and h pawn.
Yeah, sure. No. But I think f4, like, just okay, taking on f7 is smart, but you could just go f4, like, bishop controls. Okay.
I mean, I thought I would just collect the h pawn and d2.
I don't know, what did I do in the opening?
I mean, probably...
No, I mean, okay, I didn't repeat it, so I felt like, okay, if you play for I prepared to lead, so if you play d4,
why didn't you take? Why didn't you play h4 after g4?
d5.
d5.
I don't know. I panicked. It felt like okay, it should be like a draw by force. I mean, okay, even after what I did, not by force, but some endgame else, and worse into.
What after d5? It looks just very bad.
I'm very sorry.
My fault.